Hello everyone and welcome to a game I promised you in the previous video. It is Jorden from Foreest versus Praggnanandhaa, and it's a game that features positions that are unlike any you've ever seen. Well, depends on what kind of positions you usually look like, but this is very off topic when it comes to chess at this level, but that only means that you guys will enjoy it even more. So let's dive straight into it. It is also from round 1 of the Oslo Esports Cup, currently being played. Jorden has the the white pieces, and he opens with d4. We have knight to f6 by Praggo, we have c4 e6, knight to c3, and again bishop to b4. We have the Nimzo-Indian defense, queen to c2 going for the classical variation, and Praggo castles here. We have e4 and striking in the center with d5. We have e5 and knight e4 going after the knight here. So bishop to d3, just continuing development, and now striking in the center with c5. So this is all very standard stuff. Both players know exactly what's happening here. Knight f3, c captures on d4, knight captures, and knight to d7 now, going after the e5 pawn. So we defended bishop to f4, and now queen to h4, attacking the bishop here, and of course g3 now. We have to defend our bishop. We attack the queen while doing so. Queen to h5, and now Jorden just castles. We have g5 by Praggo, challenging the bishop here, and now a nice c captures on d5. So while this all looks very fancy, this has actually been played many times, and of course both of them know it. So bishop captures on c3. This is the standard reply. B captures on c3, and now not g captures on f4 because it's only temporary. For example, if you capture on f4, d captures on e6, and who's really attacking here? For example, knight captures on e5. We're going to play bishop captures on e4. And after knight to g4, threatening checkmate, we can just play h3. Or rather, even better, we can play knight to f3. h3 would be terrible. So we guard the h2 pawn this way, and now after bishop captures on e6, now we play something like queen to d2, go after the pawn. Black opens up the white king's position a little bit, but it's not all that impressive. If anyone should be better here, it should be white. So instead, after b captures on c3, we have e captures on d5, and now usually what people play here is either bishop captures on e4, or they just move this bishop because, okay, maybe it overstayed its welcome. Let's play bishop back to e3, and that's it. However, here Jorden plays g4, and that is the move that is really impressive. What can you play here? It really doesn't look like something you would expect. Why would you allow someone to open up your king like this with check? However, it's what Jorden plays. But interestingly, Praggo declines the pawn. Capturing the pawn is in fact the absolute best move recommended by the engine. But of course, even though Praggo knows this, without preparing it, he knows that Jorden knows it much better. And this is a rapid game. He will have to burn a lot of time trying to outmaneuver him in this main line of this idea. So the idea is after queen captures on g4, we're going to play bishop to g3. Already white has a threat. f3 will win material here. So you're going to have to waste a move with the queen. We're going to win our pawn back, captures, and after d captures on e4, you can choose between queen captures and even a move like f4. And this is something that if you don't know what you're doing, maybe you don't want to allow white all of this. For example, g captures on f4, rook captures on f4. It looks a bit too much as the rook is coming to f1. It's overwhelming. So instead, Praggo recollects himself and he plays queen to h3. Now asking Jorden, what do you have? What do you have now? I can always capture on g4, but now you have to play something. So he moves the bishop back, bishop to g3. Praggo eliminates the bishop, knight captures on g4, on g3, f captures on g3, and now knight captures on e5, going after that g4 pawn. But now queen to d2, going after queen captures on g5. So h6, Praggo defends it, and now knight to f5. And here you have to be very careful. Even though it seems like you can capture the g4 pawn, not really. If you capture with the queen, you just blunder your queen. Knight captures on h6, it's game over. And if you play knight captures, well then knight to e7 check. And again, it's very difficult to defend this with black, with the bishop slicing over there, the rook slicing over here, the other rook coming to e1. It's a very tough position to play. So instead, what Pragg did is not even capture the knight here. For example, if bishop captures knight, then bishop captures knight. And now, again, if you go for knight captures on g4, there's queen e2. And how are you defending this? You have to play h5, but then your queen is stuck on h3 for the rest of the game, which is not unlike what happened in the game. So instead, after this knight to f5 move, Praggu plays knight captures on d3. He says, all right, it's maybe better to get rid of the bishop. And now comes knight to e7 check first, king to g7, and queen captures on g3. We have bishop to e6. You could go for bishop captures on g4, but Praggu decides to solidify with bishop to e6. Now, okay, you're guarding the d5 pawn. If knight captures, you can always just... for example, if knight captures on d5, bishop captures on d5, queen captures, and then queen captures on g4, you get your queen back into the game. So instead, we have queen to d4 check, and here Praggu has to play king to h7, but his position isn't all that great. However, Praggu played f6 here, and unlike the previous game that we've shown where Magnus played f6, here it's not a good idea. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the absolute best idea to win the game for Jorden while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this crazy idea, because it's definitely not an easy one to spot. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's actually the simple queen d3. I say simple because it's the exact opposite of simple. It seems like, okay, you're just gonna destroy black here, but bishop to f7 would happen. You block the g6 square. Now queen f5, you go after the f6 pawn. Now we're gonna play bishop to e8 while still keeping an eye on the f6 and g6 squares. And now you're gonna play rook 8 to e1. And what can black play here? Notice that this entire time black will be playing without a queen. So here you're going to play rook to d8 with the idea of trying to get another defender here. And now knight captures on d5, rook to d6 trying to guard that f6 pawn. And now rook to e7 with check. You're going to block with bishop to f7. And now white can play pretty much anything and it's completely winning. You can start grabbing here. But okay, if you capture right away, then you allow black this very tricky hope at defending with queen captures on f1, so you can you don't even have to do that. You can play rook to d7, and it's very, very ugly. The rook cannot capture because you just completely destroy black here, so the rook has to move. Then you can even add salt to the wound by capturing a pawn here, and there's really nothing black can play here. So this would be a fine way to end things with queen to d3. However, he played knight to f5 with check, and this is not the way to win the game. Praggu eliminates the knight quickly. Rook captures on f5. Notice that the black queen still cannot enter the game, so Praggu is playing without a queen. Rook 8 to e8, and now comes rook 8 to f1. So even though the queen can't get away from the h3 square, you can threaten checkmate. Praggu plays rook to e2, goes after the h2 pawn here. Now you have to defend it. We have rook 5 back to f2, and now rook to e5, defending the d5 pawn. So here Praggu is saying, all right, I'm playing without a queen, but can you win the game without me actually using the queen? And it's not as easy as you might think. Without being able to capture the f6 pawn, how do you go about this position? Of course, you can always capture on a7, but then you allow the black queen into the game. So it seems like very odd that one player cannot use his queen while your queen is, available to move, but there's no way to put any pressure on the black king, even though the black king is completely open. But one wrong move and the queen goes back into the game, and you cannot use your rooks to add more defense to the g4 pawn. It would be very, very tricky to do so. So here queen to a4. Now comes rook to f7. Preventing any checks here, because even from here you would be guarding the g4 pawn. But now we have queen back to d1, and here it's actually Jorden that misses a great idea that Praggu can use if he wants to win the game. So feel free to pause the video for the second time. Now win the game for Praggu while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting that all this roaming with the queen wasn't all that useful. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook to e4. This is the only move that wins the game. And now it seems that there's no way for Jorden to prevent Praggu from bringing his queen back into the game. And okay, Jorden plays queen captures on d5. Now Praggu just plays queen captures on g4. And now it is definitely black who's attacking here. We have rook to f5. Now comes queen to e2. rook 5 back to f2, attacking the black queen, queen to e3. Now just not allowing the rook to move, king g2. Now comes rook to e5, chasing away the white queen, queen to b3, and now comes b6. So here, the material on the board, as you can see, Praggo is up 1 pawn, but that's not the only problem Jorden has. So here we have c4, offering a queen trade. Hopefully, if Praggo trades, maybe Jorden can connect his pawns, but just queen to e4 check, king to g1, and now rook to c5, going after the c4 pawn. And now you can pretty much see that things are not all that great, especially once this rook comes into the game. So queen to b2, now comes queen to c6, going after the pawn this way, queen to e2, and now rook captures on c4. We have h4. Now Jorden has to resort to an all-out attack if he's to survive this game. Rook to c3, goes after the g3 pawn, king h2 defending. Now queen here again goes after the g3 pawn, rook g2 defending, and now queen to e5, centralizing the queen. Now you are up 2 pawns, so of course Praggo is very comfortable trading queens now. Queen to h5, and now rook to e3. Now we're gonna try and trade off material. Plus, also we are just bringing the rook to the e file, or this way, as Praggo will do it. As you'll see, we have rook f to f2, controlling the second rank, not allowing any unnecessary trades, and now rook to e4. We have h captures on g5, h captures, now comes queen to d1, but now rook to d4. Attacking the queen, queen to f1, now comes rook f8, rook to e2, and now rook to e4. Praggo is very, very happy to trade material here. We have king to g1, now rook to e8, threatening to just win on the spot. So rook captures, queen captures, and rook to d2 now. So if you manage to get some sort of a perpetual, of course, there is still a chance, but Praggo will not allow this. Queen e3 check, we have queen to f2. Now comes king to g6. Now, if Jorden wants to trade, Praggo is very happy to do so. King g2, queen captures on f2 with check, king captures, and rook to e4. And now it's only a matter of skill, but also it is not all that difficult to win this. King to f3, we have f5. Now comes rook to d6 with check, and now king to h5. We have rook to d5 going after the pawn, g4 check, king to f2, and now king to g5, defending the f5 pawn. a3, but now rook to a4. We have rook to d3 defending, now comes b5, rook to b3, and now, of course, a6. So, unfortunately for Jorden, he's running auto moves, rook to d3, now comes rook to c4, king to e2, and now rook to c2 with check. King d1, now comes rook to f2, and it was in this position on move 62 that Jorden van Foreest resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Whatever you do, doesn't really matter. Rook f3 is coming. Now you either have to trade or you will start losing even more material, and both of it is losing. Of course, the king and pawn endgame is very much winning for black because you're up 2 pawns, and after a move like this and this, white is in zugzwang. You have to move your king, lose more material, and then it's a very easy win. So yeah, after rook f2, Jorden resigned the game on move 62, and a very, very nice victory for Praggo with the black pieces, who wins this game, if you think about it, without a queen. So here, after this f6 move that completely weakened the position, this is not an easy tactic to spot in rapid chess, make no mistake, because you can see that the bishop defends the position so easily, but unfortunately for Jorden, that was not the case here. But I mean, the queen was trapped on h3 for the entire game, and then Jorden, was just loitering with the queen. He completely missed this idea that Praggo used to go after the g4 pawn, and that was enough to bring the queen back into the game. But just incredible that it's even possible to survive this with your queen absolutely stuck here. This is just crazy. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, as a lot of you have requested it as soon as it happened. I would like to thank Pratame Shekhar Mahajan, US FDEFRI, US FDEFRI, Nicholas Padau, and Andrew Dabrowski for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this Oslo Esports event that is currently happening. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And tomorrow there is a very special surprise with a very special video. So see you soon.